All right, welcome back everybody for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be talking about Shaman Durek.
Okay.
And we're using his interview from the YouTube channel Peaceful Path Pioneers. So it's with Ofime Galarraga.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be taking a look at his ideas on self-discovery and resilience and spiritual growth and all those things.
Sounds good.
So one of the things that I thought was really interesting is that, he kind of flips the script on how we think about criticism.
Okay.
And he says that, a lot of times if you're getting criticized for something, it means you're actually on the right path.
Interesting.
And, he even said at one point that, like, he knew he was on the right path because people were questioning his sanity.
Yeah. I mean, I could definitely see that. There's a certain boldness to that statement.
Right.
It's like when you're really living in alignment with your values,
Right.
you're gonna ruffle some feathers. You're gonna make people uncomfortable because you're stepping outside of what's considered normal or acceptable.
Right. It's like that saying,
Yeah.
the nail that sticks out gets hammered down.
Exactly.
But,
But the thing is, like, research actually shows that
Yeah.
people who are willing to be different, to go against the grain, they often experience greater psychological well-being.
Oh, interesting.
They're more likely to feel a sense of purpose and satisfaction
Huh.
because they're not trying to fit into a mold that doesn't suit them.
Yeah.
They're forging their own path.
So that criticism, that pushback,
Right.
is almost like a sign that, okay, you're breaking free.
Yeah.
You're becoming your own person.
Precisely. Yeah. And that kind of leads into another one of Durek's key points that we see in the interview,
Okay.
which is his incredible resilience in the face of adversity.
Right.
I mean, this guy has faced some serious negativity,
Oh, yeah.
not just from the public,
Yeah.
but even from his own family.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing when you're getting criticized by the press and stuff,
Yeah.
but when your own mother and your own sister are like
yeah.
joining in on the attacks and saying that, he's a con man and stuff,
That's heartbreaking, yeah.
that's a whole other level.
It's hard to fathom,
Yeah.
the emotional toll that must have taken on him.
Right.
You would think that it would make anyone bitter and resentful.
Yeah, totally.
But Durek's response is astonishing.
Yeah.
He chooses love and forgiveness over retaliation.
It's almost like he's saying, you can throw all the hate you want at me,
Right.
but I'm just going to meet it with love.
Exactly.
And that's going to take a lot of strength.
It does, yeah.
Where does that come from?
Right.
Is it rooted in his spiritual beliefs?
Yeah, Is it his connection to something bigger than himself?
Right.
It's a good question.
And then speaking of his spiritual beliefs,
Yeah.
he has this really interesting perspective on happiness. He says that the true sin is doing things that don't make you happy.
So he's kind of turning conventional morality on its head there.
Yeah.
Instead of focusing on external rules and restrictions,
Yeah.
he's emphasizing the importance of aligning your actions with your inner compass.
Yeah. And I remember this part in the interview where someone asks him,
Right.
what if you need to make money?
Mm-hmm.
And he's basically like, that's a stupid question.
Wow.
Like, why would you even consider doing something that doesn't bring you joy?
There's a real sense of radical self-acceptance
Yeah.
in his message.
Yeah.
He's saying that prioritizing your own happiness isn't selfish.
Right.
It's actually a way of honoring your true self,
Right.
the divine spark within you.
Yeah, it's pretty different from the
Oh,
traditional view of self-denial and sacrifice
Absolutely.
as paths to spiritual growth.
Yeah. Yeah, but if you think about it, there's a long history of philosophical and spiritual traditions
Right.
that emphasize the importance of living in accordance with your true nature.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that you are inherently worthy
Right.
of happiness and fulfillment.
So it's not about just indulging in fleeting pleasures.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's about pursuing a life that is deeply aligned
Yeah.
with your passions and purpose.
Mm-hmm. And that kind of leads us to another fascinating aspect of Durek's teachings,
Okay.
which is his concept of the R experience.
Oh, yeah. He talks about that a lot.
He does.
He's all about finding joy and wonder in everyday life.
Yeah.
And not just like the big
Mhm.
monumental moments.
Yeah.
But like in the small things as well.
Exactly. Yeah, and he gave some specific examples in the interview.
Oh, yeah.
Like playing video games,
Oh, real?
looking at sticker books,
Oh,
singing, dancing.
that's not what you would typically expect.
Right. It's not your typical
Yeah.
spiritual guru advice.
Right.
But it's refreshing.
Yeah, it's very refreshing. He's saying that cultivating this sense of awe and wonder is essential for spiritual growth.
And that joy doesn't have to be this grand, elusive thing.
Right.
It can be found in the smallest details of life.
Yeah.
If you're open to experiencing them.
So it's a matter of shifting your perspective,
Yeah.
appreciating the beauty that's all around us.
Absolutely.
Even in like the mundane. And, that brings us to another interesting thing about Derek's approach.
Okay.
Is his spiritual eclecticism.
Yeah.
He's not subscribed to any one dogma or tradition.
He's like a spiritual mixologist.
Yeah.
He's blending elements from Christianity, Islam, Buddhism,
Right, all kinds of things.
indigenous African practices, voodoo, you name it.
Yeah.
And he even talks about how,
Yeah.
the ego isn't inherently bad.
Oh, interesting.
And he shared this story about,
Yeah.
asking a tree for permission before hugging it.
I love that story.
It's so Durek.
Yeah.
It speaks to his open-mindedness.
Right.
And his willingness to learn from different perspectives.
Mhm.
And, this idea of spiritual eclecticism
Yeah.
is becoming increasingly popular,
Yeah. I've noticed that.
especially among younger generations.
Yeah, it's like people are creating their own personalized
Right.
spiritual paths,
Yeah.
taking what resonates with them from various traditions and
That's
kind
true.
of moving it into something that feels
Yeah,
authentic and meaningful to them.
absolutely.
And while there are definitely benefits to that,
Right.
it's also important, I think, to approach it with respect
Absolutely.
and a willingness to learn.
Yeah, it's about being open-minded.
Yeah.
And that actually leads us to
Okay.
another point that Durek emphasizes, which is the importance of supporting and learning
Yeah.
from
Mm.
people of color in the spiritual realm.
Yeah, he seems very passionate about this.
Yes.
Calling for greater recognition
Yes.
of the contributions of non-Western cultures.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
To spirituality.
And rightfully so.
Yeah.
I mean, historically, spiritual practices from non-Western cultures
Mm-hmm.
have often been marginalized or appropriated.
Yes.
And Doric's statement is a reminder
Yeah.
to honor the richness and diversity of spiritual wisdom that exists in the world
Yeah.
and to ensure that all voices are heard and respected.
Like he's saying, let's expand our understanding
Yes.
of spirituality
Yes,
beyond the dominant narratives
exactly.
and explore this incredible tapestry
Yeah.
of spiritual wisdom that exists in the world.
And that exploration can be incredibly enriching.
Yeah,
It
definitely.
allows us to challenge our assumptions, broaden our perspectives,
Yeah.
and deepen our connection to the divine
Yeah.
in all its forms.
So we've got this emphasis on embracing criticism, choosing love over hate,
Right.
finding joy in the everyday,
Yeah.
honoring diverse spiritual traditions.
It's a lot to unpack,
It is.
but it feels like we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah. Of Durek's fascinating perspective.
Definitely.
Yeah. And there's another part of his philosophy that I think ties a lot of this together.
Okay.
It's this idea of trusting in a higher power.
Oh, yeah. He talks about that a lot.
Yeah.
Trusting God, trusting the universe, trusting the process.
Right.
Just letting go of control and having faith that things will work out.
Surrendering to something bigger than yourself.
Right.
Allowing the universe to guide you.
Yeah, it's definitely a very freeing idea.
Yeah.
But I think for some people, that concept of blind faith can be a little bit scary.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's like, are you really just supposed to give up all your sense of agency?
Right, right. And I think, blind faith without any sort of discernment or critical thinking can be dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think what Durek is advocating for is a more nuanced approach.
Okay.
It's about finding that balance between trusting in a higher power
Okay.
and using your own judgment.
So it's not about just blindly following someone else's dictates or anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about tuning into your own intuition.
Yeah, tapping into your own inner wisdom,
Yeah.
that intuitive knowing
Yeah.
that guides you towards what's right for you.
Right. And when you cultivate that trust,
Right.
it allows you to be more resilient.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you know you're being supported,
Yeah.
even if you can't see the full picture.
And that brings us back to, his unique perspective on the ego,
Okay.
where he's saying it's not this thing that has to be completely eradicated.
Right.
It's more about training the ego,
Yeah, bringing it into balance.
understanding its role.
It's a fascinating perspective
Yeah.
because instead of seeing the ego as the enemy of spiritual growth,
Right.
he's suggesting that it can actually be an ally
Okay.
on the path to self-discovery.
So it's not about suppressing it.
Right.
It's about understanding it.
Understanding its strengths and weaknesses
Yeah.
and learning how to integrate it in
Yeah.
your spiritual journey.
And I think that idea of integration is key to his whole philosophy.
Yeah, he's all about embracing all points of yourself,
Right.
the light and the shadow, finding a way to weave them together.
Into a harmonious whole.
Exactly.
And that reminds me of, his whole emphasis on the awe experience and finding joy and wonder in everyday life.
Yeah, he's really advocating for a shift in perspective.
Right.
It's about training your mind to focus on the positive,
Yeah.
to find the beauty in the mundane.
What are some things that bring you that sense of awe and wonder?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's often those moments when I'm completely immersed in nature.
Okay.
Whether it's hiking in the mountains or even just listening to the birds sing. There's a sense of peace and interconnectedness that washes over me in those moments.
And that speaks to his idea that we're all connected, right?
Exactly.
Part of something larger than ourselves.
Yeah, a web of life that connects us all.
And for him, a big part of nurturing that connection is honoring and supporting people of color in the spiritual realm.
He's very vocal about this.
Yeah.
Urging his followers to seek out and learn from spiritual leaders and traditions that have historically been marginalized.
Right. It's not just about being politically correct or anything.
Yeah, it's about recognizing the profound contributions that non-Western cultures have made to our understanding of the divine.
And there's so much we can learn from those traditions.
Absolutely, yeah.
Their connection to nature, their emphasis on community, their reverence for the ancestors.
It's a whole other dimension of spirituality that often gets overlooked.
And his message seems to be about breaking down those barriers.
Yes,
and creating a more inclusive and equitable spiritual landscape.
Yeah, where all voices are heard and respected.
Right, because we're all on this journey together, and we can learn from each other.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I really appreciated about Durek's message is this idea of personal responsibility. He's not sugarcoating things. He's challenging us to look at our own patterns and make conscious choices.
He's definitely not afraid to call people out on their BS.
Yeah.
Which I think is refreshing.
Yeah.
He's not promising a quick fix or a magical solution.
He's saying it takes work.
It does, yeah.
And it takes introspection.
True spiritual growth requires effort.
Yeah.
Introspection, a willingness to face your own shadows.
He's not just telling us what we want to hear.
Right.
He's pushing us.
He is, yeah.
To become better.
To become the best versions of ourselves.
Yeah, and that can be uncomfortable.
It can.
But it can also be very liberating.
It is, yeah.
To break free from those limitations and step into our full potential.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like giving us permission to let go of all those old beliefs and patterns that aren't serving us anymore.
Absolutely.
And embrace something new.
Yeah, and a big part of that new way of being, according to Durek, is choosing love over hate.
Oh, yeah, he talks about that a lot.
Yeah, he does. And not just in a romantic sense.
Right.
But as like a fundamental way of approaching life.
Yeah.
Like a lens through which you view the world.
Yeah, and even when he's faced with all that negativity and those personal attacks, he still chooses to respond with love and forgiveness.
And that's where his emphasis on trusting a higher power comes in.
Okay.
He believes that when you surrender to something larger than yourself, you tap into a source of strength and resilience that allows you to transcend all that pettiness and drama.
So it's not about ignoring the pain or pretending everything's okay.
Right.
It's about choosing to see the world through a different lens.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that we all have that capacity for both darkness and light and choosing to focus on the light.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so inspiring about Doak's message.
Yeah.
He's not preaching from a place of judgment or superiority.
Right.
He's speaking from a place of deep compassion.
Right, like we're all in this together.
Exactly, yeah.
We're all on this journey together.
And that journey, according to Durek, is all about embracing your awe experience.
Right. Finding that joy in everyday life.
Yeah, seeking out those moments that make you feel alive and connected to something bigger.
Yeah, cultivating that sense of wonder, appreciation for the beauty.
It's about shifting your perspective.
Right.
Training your mind to focus on the positive.
And I think that can have a big impact.
It can, yeah.
Not just on us, but on the people around us.
Absolutely, yeah. Because when you're radiating joy and positivity, you inspire others to do the same.
Yeah, it's like creating a ripple effect.
Exactly.
Of positivity.
Yeah, and that brings us back to Durek's emphasis on supporting and learning from people of color in the spiritual realm.
Right. Breaking free from those narrow definitions of spirituality that exclude certain groups.
He's inviting us to explore the vast tapestry of spiritual wisdom that exists in the world.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that spiritual growth is a collective endeavor.
Absolutely.
We all have something unique to offer.
We do, yeah.
We can all learn from each other.
And that's what I find so hopeful about his message.
Yeah.
You know, he's not just talking about personal transformation.
Right.
He's talking about creating a more just and compassionate world.
So as we're wrapping up this deep dive into the world of Shaman Durek, I'm left with a feeling of possibility.
Me too.
You know, his perspective challenges us to think differently.
It does.
About ourselves, about our relationships, about our place in the universe.
He invites us to embrace our own unique gifts, to step into our power, and create a life that's aligned with our highest purpose.
He reminds us that we have the power to choose love over fear,
Yeah.
Joy over despair, hope over cynicism.
Absolutely.
And that those choices, no matter how small, can have a ripple effect and make the world a more beautiful place.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
We hope you learned something.
We hope you enjoyed it.
And we'll see you next time.
Take care.